In this week's video, we're going to do something a little bit different than normally because we are between trips. Actually, later today, Tanya and I are going to be leaving for Mexico for a week. And so instead of a current travel video this week, what we're going to do is talk about a couple of trips that we've taken in the past in Germany. Now, as many of our viewers know, we lived in Germany from 2011 to 2018 for 7 years, and during that time, we were able to visit a lot of the country, and we wanted to cover a couple of interesting places that we went to while we were there. So sit back and enjoy. In 2015, Tanya and I went to Zell. And I call this one Tales of the Black Cat and the Wine Queen. Got your attention yet? Zell is one of those picture-perfect wine towns nestled along the banks of the Mosel River in Germany's Rhineland-Pfalz. I especially remember Zell from my university days, where I was introduced to the city's primary product, Zeller Schwarze Katz, or Zell's Black Cat, by a guy in my freshman dorm who just loved this stuff. The name is given to virtually all of the wine produced here, and one can't go a block without seeing the ubiquitous black cat with his back arched, or more often smiling and hoisting a glass of Riesling in its hand, or paw. One thing is for sure, the people of Zell are always up for a party, and the weekend we were there in October of 2015, Zellers were out in force, celebrating their Feder Weizenfest, or celebration of the new wine, which at this point is really not much more than pressed grape juice with a very low alcoholic content. Nonetheless, it's reason enough to have a party, because one cannot get away from seeing images of the black cat everywhere in Zell. We had to get the real story behind it. It turns out that in the fall of 1863, 3 wine merchants from Aachen were in Zell negotiating for wine to bring back home. The merchants were in the cellar of winemaker Peter Mainzer, and after several tastings, they could not agree on which of the 3 barrels of wine that they would buy. Well, right about that time, according to the legend, Mainzer's black cat jumped onto one of the barrels, hissing and defending the barrel from any would-be aggressors. Well, the merchants immediately took this as a sign, bought the barrel without tasting it, and brought it back to Aachen, where they bottled and labeled it with the picture of a black cat with an arching back. The wine proved to be so popular that the merchants returned the following year for more of the black cat wine, and from that time on, Zeller Schwarze Katz has been synonymous with the wine grown in this region. The name has now been trademarked by the town and is just as vigorously defended as was the barrel of its namesake. Zell, like many other towns along the Mosel, has its local wine queen. 3 years previously, in 2012, we visited Zell with some friends and met the then reigning wine queen, then 19-year-old Queen Judith Hollenbach, at her family's winery. We caught up with Judith again to learn more about her family's operation and what's in store for the wine queen who no longer wears the crown. Judith was then 22 in 2015 and lived in an apartment within the family's house right along the main entry street to Zell. She was attending university in nearby Trier, was studying economics, and intended to continue working in the family wine operation. She explained how the family has gradually increased their vineyard holdings and now has vines in several locations in the vicinity, including vines just above the famous Zeller Schwarze Katz sign. Queen Judith, she saw her future in Zell, working with her family and continuing the Hollenbach wine operation. A quick check on LinkedIn shows that Judith now works as an account manager for a firm in Zell, and no doubt she still is an important part of this 5th generation Zell wine family. Anyone visiting Germany's Black Forest region must visit the happening university town of Freiburg. Freiburg is noted as being the sunniest and the warmest place in Germany. It holds the all-time record temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit, but on a wet fall weekend, those warm temperatures were long gone when we visited. In Freiburg, we made some cool discoveries. A top place to eat is the Markthal, a combination market and food court right in the heart of town. The Markthal is a terrific place to eat, meet, and drink, and on weekends there's live entertainment. We were on hand to hear the Red House Hot Six, a local band that was very popular. Another discovery was a local favorite watering hole, Hausbrauerei Feierling, always a crowd pleaser. After visiting Freiburg, went to the towns of Bad Krozingen and Staufen. This cute little town of 7,700 is at the center of the region's wine district, and people love their wine here. At the entrance to Staufen, vineyards cover the upside-down goblet-shaped hill and its castle at the top. The city does have a major problem, though. In 2007, when the City Hall was being renovated, workers tapped into hot underground water under the building. And this looked like a great idea for geothermal heating, and all went well for a few weeks until people started discovering cracks in the walls of many of Staufen's buildings, including the City Hall. It seems the hot water started soaking up a layer of dry gypsum underneath the town. The gypsum started expanding, and the earth has now risen between 4 to 12 inches, 12 to 30 centimeters, in many sections of the town, and shows no sign of stopping. This is a real problem, and cracks can be seen on building walls throughout Staufen. Maybe Staufen's misfortunes are due not just to the hot underground water, but to something even more exciting that happened in 1539. In the building now home to the Gasthaus zum Löwen, an alchemist was working diligently to produce gold from various chemical elements. Unfortunately, the chemist wasn't too careful one day, and he accidentally caused an explosion, which killed him. The alchemist's name was Johann Georg Faust. Residents were sure that Faust must have been in league with the devil to create such misfortune. However, how else to explain it? In the 18th century, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe glommed onto the legend of poor old Dr. Faust and created the greatest work of German literature, where Faust sells his soul to the devil. And so the question naturally arises, is Staufen destined to eventually destroy itself? Not just from the underground hot water, but from Faust's deal with the devil. What a perfect Halloween story. Thank you for watching this week's video, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.